Welcome everyone here on another session of CEFA 2020 here from Aruba. Today we're going to speak about the benefits of circular economy and about some topics which I would like you, and I propose you to speak in sort of a language very easy, because people sometimes you speak very technically, and I hope people like me that understand just a tiny bit will understand all this, okay? Now, today we have 5 experts from different parts of the world. We have Ken Alston from the United States. We have Andrea Herrera, ladies, from Colombia. Luis Akenji, Canadian, if I'm right. Alexandre Gobo from Brazil. And Rob Omen from Holland. Okay? Now, my first question in all this, talking about the benefits of the circular economy, is that we are here in Aruba, and 95%, I think 95% of the incomes from the island is tourism or ecotourism, correct? And we are in the Americas, where we have natural resources, loads of natural resources. How this sustainable ecotourism will bring opportunities to America, just looking at on the scope of circular economy. Just Alex, please.
Oh, thank you, Jorge. It's very good to be here at another session in CEFA again. We are together delivering this meeting with many countries around the Americas and Europe as well. But people there are more focused on business and on the issues and the topics of the Americas, especially because we know that the circular economy, that most of the people know, most of the documents of the circular economy and the studies are made more for the context and the reality of Europe. And now that the circular economy is after 10 years I'm working with the circular economy already. Started with Cradle to Cradle in 2010 in Brazil. Now you have finally the universities and the government and the businessmen started to really got the focus and understand that the circular economy can be applied and have many benefits for the reality of the Americas, especially for developing countries, which is a completely different benefit. Let's say the benefits here are different from the benefits that the Europe are looking for. And so when you talk about the ecotourism in Aruba, what I think, as Brazil is always a very touristic country, is not the main activity or main part of the income, but you're talking about the context of the place. And this is important to see that circular economy is not a goal by itself. So the circular economy, it's a way to reach a goal that makes sense for the people of the place. So if you're talking about a territory which is an island, could be a small village or community, or can be a territory like Latin America or South America. We are working now for the roadmap of Brazil, Mexico, Uruguay, and Chile, and the interchange of experience between these 4 countries has been fantastic. So you can have these different scales and benefit. And
it's 17 hours.
If you see that for Aruba, it's important to find out a way to make the tourism be more responsible and more sustainable as a goal for the people that are here that can really live benefits, which is, let's say you have to, in an island, I live in an island in Brazil, but in Brazil, the island is very nearby Florianopolis, the country. So it's not like Aruba, but at the same, I can see that this everything that comes into the island has to be very valued for the longest you can. You cannot just import things and just use one time and throw it away as waste. Is not the cleverest way. It's not the right way to do it. It's not the responsible way and sustainable. So trying to say that the tourism, when we talk about tourism, we're not talking about just people. We're talking about glass, cups of glass. We're talking about water. We're talking about energy. We're talking about how the land is being used by the hotels or people that renting on the commerce. How is the profile of the commerce? So there's many issues that the circular economy can approach. So I'll leave for a little bit for the others, but we can get back to this. The approach we do in Brazil is to find out three lines. One line is what we want to phase out. So we have to manage the failures of the system, the linear system in the tourism. So what is not right? What's not going the way we want in a sustainable and responsible way? So we have to manage this. You're not going to change from one day to another. So the second line is what we want to innovate. So I don't know if they have a slide from this. They can show it. But if you go and innovate, then you have to put the efforts to create environment and to people innovate on this perspective, this new perspective. There, the circular economy can help you a lot. So first, understand what is linear, and second, to understand what is circular that you want to move ahead, and you want to move ahead for a more sustainable island, which is maybe you can reach the SDG, use the SDGs goals to reach this sustainability. And the third one is to know what you want for the future, which means you have to have a vision of the benefits you want. So this vision has to be compiling. So having a tourism that is fully sustainable in an island, which means everything that comes to an island stays here with value. This can be a very powerful message. And how to do it? Let's figure out. Let's talk with different actors. So I'll leave it here to discuss a little bit more, but that's the way I think we should approach the problem this way.
All right, wait a second, because I want to keep going with Luis, because Luis told us he was going to speak about the demand of ecotourism. I want to go deep inside that, because I think that's interesting, and I think that what you said, all those concepts make the ecotourism much more valuable for the tourists and for the people from
Has to be.
Yeah, the island, for example. Okay, Luis, we're all yours.
Thank you so very much. It's wonderful to join you, albeit virtually this time. And I think the question you ask is really very topical, and it is especially valid for this conference. Perhaps a starting point with this is to understand a distinction between what we refer to as circular economy in comparison to the linear economy. And since you asked us to talk in an everyday language, a very easy example of understanding what a linear economy is the plastic waste and all the waste generated, which we see around us all the time. What a circular economy suggests is that instead of taking, building, consuming, and throwing away, whatever we build or whatever we produce stays in the system and circulates for as long as possible, going through several cycles and allowing us to optimize use of it before finally, where we can no longer use it, we transform it into something else. Now, a few myths to take away from the idea of a circular economy is to start by understanding quite often people interpret this as a developed country issue or a developed country framing. It is actually not. It's an opportunity also for developing countries, including areas like Aruba, where you are now, to put in perspective what sort of development they want to get for themselves, whether it's just a waste generating and polluting system or one which actually sustains for a very long time and provides well-being to people. The second thing people often think about when they think about a circular economy is that it's all about technology. Yes, it is about technology, but it is also about looking at our traditional systems and looking at how to revive some of the things that we know and bring them into service of the economy and society. And the third thing is that because we mentioned the word economy, it almost seems that we're always suggesting that a circular economy is really just about businesses or business development, which is actually not very true, because there's a demand side to it. The entire purpose of business is to meet the needs and wants of society and households and individuals that are in it. The question now goes a little bit more critically or more focused on tourism. We've seen lots of examples of pristine areas where there's exploitative tourism being practiced rather than regenerative tourism. Exploitative tourism being in the sense that people come there, they go enjoy the site or they consume the site and they leave it worse than it is. And because lots of areas, including Aruba, actually depend on finances from tourism to fund other things, it's created a sort of dependency. But what if tourism was actually designed in a way that, beyond going just a superficial idea of respect for the culture and nature, it actually allows for participation of those who come to visit and an understanding of the culture. It allows for less waste creation in there. And it actually allows for people to come and understand and learn and take away something. What are the traditional practices of the people there? How do people engage there and live as better with richer perspectives? How do they, what sort of hoteling services are provided? What sort of food is provided there? And what sort of economy does the tourism contribute to, rather than just contributing to a throwaway society, or contributing to degrading the nature and the culture where the tourism is taking place? I think these are quite fundamental to a circular economy approach.
All right. Dear Andrea, what do you tell us about that?
I really like how Luis explained what circular economy is, first explaining what linear economy and why we need a system that works different. I think it's important to recognize that the problem started with the first industrial revolution, where the focus was taking the natural resources as granted. Yeah? We thought about that like they are infinitive, but we didn't consider the side effects of this production of the linear economy, which is pollution, all the loss of biodiversity. And when you mention in tourism, I think this is one of the ecosystem services that nature provides for us. We are getting benefits of ecotourism, of inviting people, for instance, to come to this island to see like the services of nature. And it's important to see that if we want to continue taking advantage of these ecosystem services, we cannot take the natural resources as granted, and we need to start taking care of that. We cannot continue in the linear economy, losing the resources, but instead of that, doing circular, being more circular.
Okay. Ken, would you please help us with this?
I will try. For me, I have probably the grayest hair around the panel, and so I've been dealing with these questions for probably the longest time, which doesn't necessarily give me the best answer, but it just means I've been trying for longer. And I think this has been part of what we've been doing for more than 30 years. We've been trying to be more sustainable. And we had this idea from the Brundtland Commission in 1987 that we needed sustainable development that didn't have all of these side effects you were just mentioning from the original industrial revolution that just went from bad to worse, right, in a way. And yet, for all the effort we've had in trying to become more sustainable, we're probably less sustainable now than when that definition first came out 33 years ago. So we've been missing something. And I think, Lewis really underscored what's been missing in his very first comments, which is we've been stuck in this linear system. We didn't really think about it, but that's what we had. And so the reason the circular part of circular economy comes popular now is because we think we have a different, better, new way of looking at the flows of materials and how we do things and how people interact in the world that has this circular idea underpinning it. But for me, we're not trying to sell circularity per se. We're trying to go back to the needs that was mentioned at the beginning. Say, what is we want? What are the good things we want? What do we want more of? What do we want to grow? We want to grow good things. We don't want to grow more bad processes that have more pollution. So we have to change some of the questions we ask. And when I look back at the time period when we've been looking at sustainability, we've mainly, and even today, we are still mainly looking at how to be less bad. So we've identified these things where we've been harming the ecosystem and we've not been working properly with, respecting people in many different ways and respecting diversity and other species. Let's remember, there's more than just the human species. My goodness, what an idea. And we're still just trying to be less bad. So we keep talking about less waste or zero carbon. I'm not interested in zero carbon because, frankly, I'm made of carbon, right? So I want to be carbon positive for as long as I can, right? So I think we have to change some of the dialogue, change some of the language, and that will help us change how we think about these ideas. And to the point that circular economy makes you think it's only about money or some aspect, I always like to talk about sustainable circular economy because I can imagine many, many different types of circular products and processes that are completely still unsustainable. So when we bring sustainability ideas back in, we can still have the benefit of all these last 33 years of thinking. And guess what? We bring back the 3 E's. We have economics, it's still there as economy, but we add in equity and we add in environment. And so by keeping the best of sustainability, marrying it with circularity concept, then we have to say, well, what does all this mean in practice? And I think that's where we go next, hopefully in the discussion. It says, okay, so now what do we do? We have a change of concept, change of mindset to think in some circular ways. But what does that mean for tourism? It's a whole new question.
Let's ask Rob about that because I have a next question for this same topic because this is very interesting.
Well, actually, exactly adding on to what Ken has been talking about over the past few minutes, like the question we're asking here, what should sustainable eco tourism look like? With the question, I like that. I think we position it as something we do extra or we do something that is special. Whereas I would like to flip it around and say, instead of naming the benefits, what if we don't do it? Oftentimes when you see it can be in the tourism industry, if a hotel does something good, they receive an award and they get a pat on the shoulders for being sustainable and basically being put in a unique place, whereas actually that should be the most normal place there is. And then the ones who don't do it, that should be the unique place, so to say. So I also like to flip the question around. Instead of finding the reasons why to do it, is like the discussion should be the other way around. Like, why are we still not doing it? And the suggestion or the parallel I want to make with the pandemic we're in now, if we would have come here a year ago and they would have said to us like, oh, you need to have a medical test. If you don't, you need to quarantine in your hotel. You need to wear a face mask. You need to, and within a year, less than a year, the whole island, but all around the world, we're in the ban of health and safety. And suddenly it's possible to have everywhere hand gels, to have face masks, and we all do it. So if, for example, here on the island, a big waste stream is plastic, for example, from bottles and how our food has been packaged and so on. I believe if we are really willing to, we can eliminate that within a year. But the urgency, the level of urgency that we have seen with the pandemic, that level of urgency is not being posed out there with the environment. And I think that is the question we should be asking ourselves. How can we trigger for my first time here on Aruba, but how can together with the government of Aruba and the local hotels here, how can you come together and say, let's in the next 3 years solve, for example, the plastic problem, and there is a couple more, and get down to it. And I think then you can call it sustainable ecotourism, but that then just becomes the new normal. And I think that's more the area where we should develop new things on. So I'm gonna leave it with that for now.
Okay, now the main goal of circular economy, as you say, is sustainability. Correct? That's how in the long run adds value. Talking about tourism, this adds value to the country, to the region, or to whatever. Correct? Now, how can we in all the Americas, because we have loads of places with loads of nature. I think that maybe 60 or 70% of the nature of natural places are here in the Americas. How are we able to, first of all, to implement circular economy in what you say, Rob, in the mindsets of the governments, in the institutions, and in the people, the culture of the people? Because you were talking about that, Alex, about the culture. How do we do it? How do we do it, Luis?
Hi, you really do get into the heart of the matter. How do we do it? I think there's a wide recognition now that we really do need the approach we're taking to economic development, not the least because it is not meeting the needs of everyone, and a few people are benefiting, and a large majority of the people are not really getting the full gains of the economic system we have right now. So if not just for environmental reasons, there are lots of social and justice reasons why we should be rethinking the linear economy and moving into a circular economy. Now, a number of things that come to mind immediately is at the very heart of this, because we're talking about the economy, is finance, right? And we have finance instruments, for example, bank loans and lending systems and so on, that are designed for the first half of last century. And yet we're thinking of updating our economic systems without necessarily updating the financial system that underscores this. So we need a rethink of how we're financing, not just the circular economy, but the economy overall. Because if we start making too much of a distinction or running two parallel economies, one circular economy and one linear economy, it defeats the entire purpose. And right now, what we see is there's an attempt to have both at the same time. It's quite misleading. The second thing is to really rethink where the value of the economy is and who is playing the most active role. Governments spend a lot of money, a lot of policy, a lot of political capital propping up transnational corporations and big multinational companies. Of course, each one of them hires tens of thousands of people, some even hundreds of thousands of people. But in almost every country, both developed and developing countries, the heartbeat is small and medium-sized enterprises, and yet they're almost an afterthought in economic design policy. Or if not an afterthought, they come second, or they don't even have the lobby power that these large corporations have. If we start rethinking our economies in a way that we empower in a sense, a grassroots development of ideas, of meeting of needs, of distribution systems, positioning SMEs not just as profit-making machines, but also as constituent parts as integral parts of solving social and environmental issues at local level, then we really come to reviving an area that we've long left dormant. This is especially important for developing countries. The third part, of course, is financing for innovation. We've tried and tested a few models and they work, and we've gotten stuck there. But we're talking about a new economic model here, which is circular, and we're not at the same time talking about innovation in some of these countries. So we really need to start putting in place policies, financing, and so on that would spark innovation at a local level, and that would make sure that there's a substantial buy-in from the public here. Talking of buy-in, and I think this is where we usually leave people out, the fact that we're having to explain a concept as central to sustainability, as circular economy again and again, means that we have taken an expert-driven approach to it, when in reality, it's talking about the livelihoods of people, the well-being of people, the central engine of our society, right? We cannot have an expert-driven agenda like this and then expect everyone to fully suddenly support it. Not everyone is an expert. Not everyone wants to get up in the morning sitting with your family talking about a circular economy. We need to bring this down to a level where people are actually participating, where there's buy-in, where there's even enthusiastic support for transformation of the direction of our present economies.
Thank you, Luis. Yes, please.
I love what you just said there, Luis, and I like to call it circular economy by stealth, right? As a person who's been talking about this stuff for a long time, you can think like it's just a conceptual stuff that we all enjoy talking about like we are today. But reality is just we need to find a way to put it into practice. And you don't do that by just trying to sell circular economy. And so I think we do it through tools and techniques that all then lead to the direction that Luis was saying. How do we change how we do everything so that everybody benefits and we all get improvement in our life and our livelihoods? But we just happen to be doing it through circular thinking. So we've made the mind shift. Enough people are thinking this way. So now we don't have to sell circular economy as a thing. We just have to get into the doing of it. And that's, for me, we won't have any benefits if we don't do anything. And this is where I've spent the last couple of years of my work in trying to blend into this doing part in a much more active way, providing and finding and inventing new tools that enable all this to happen at a ground level, at a local level, and then let the innovation flow from the local people. There's tons of people everywhere I go who are just dying to get involved. I've spoken extensively in Colombia and universities, and almost every time some young person gets up, so what can I do? That's the question. So how do we empower those individual people at every level to get up and do something that is beneficial to them, to their community, to their country? And it just happens to be around circular economy.
Let me ask something. Who do you think would be the person or the institution that needs to empower those people?
Can I talk about this? We get to the point. I think the point is, well, if we assume we are in a transition, well, maybe that's why we talk about linear and circular at the same time, because we are transitioning. So you have to assume this. We are not in the circular economy and we are not in the linear anymore. We are in the middle. So that's our job, to cross the river, is not to see the other side, maybe. So this is one thing. Another thing, yeah. And the other thing is, it's all about innovation. It's all about not knowing what is this thing. There's no standard for circular economy yet, and the standards, I'm working with groups trying to make standards for ISO and others in Brazil, and they're not, the conversation is tough. And one problem of the circular economy, I think that for a lot of the time was that thinking that magically we're gonna do a product, and this product will be circular because it potentially can be recycled and not harm and this will solve one product by the other. And this was a little, it was the start, but this will not be from the products. The products are part of the solution, and the problem as well, of course, but the system will be changing. And for changing the system, we need innovation. But where does innovation come from, and who will push this innovation forward? There's no answer directly, but what we need, we need to design a roadmap to cross this river, right? But how can we design a roadmap if we don't know where we want to go? So I get to my point. To put people on board without knowing exactly who will stand up with the new pattern. Because when you design a new product, you potentially are designing the new pattern for dismantling, maybe, or for this new material, or for this new recycling process. Anyone can be the next standard for the globe in a circular economy when it's fully circular. But then you have to create a vision of where you have to create the idea of a mission. Think about when you talk about the United States said they want to go to the moon. That idea that if you talk about this, if you ask anyone in the United States and ask what we are doing now, they will say to you, we are going to the moon. Everyone was going to the moon because we have to change textiles. We have to find sneakers. You have to find materials. You have to design new air systems or new. Everything has to be changed, and you don't know where this innovation come from. But you need to put everyone on board. So look back to the ecotourism. What is the most important thing for an island? When you talk about ecotourism, Aruba, it's the ocean. Maybe it's biodiversity. So without these elements, where's the tourism for this specific point? So can we, instead of sending the man to the moon, clean all the oceans from the plastic from the oceans, as Rob has said? So this could be something to put everyone on board, from the deliver boy and to the importers and government trying to make it happen with new rules, regulations, and investors trying to innovate and innovators trying to think about. So that's, I think, would be the first step. Well, to answer the question of this table, what are the benefits we want? What are the benefits? Because benefits moves people. Goals moves people.
So there's one dream. All the actors must think and go to that dream, as you're saying.
But it has to be a very consistent dream, and the circular economy can be a tool to design this dream, but to also to find ways to go to the dream. But dream is very important.
Luis, go ahead.
I think this question of who is really an important one, and there is quite, to put it very pointedly, governments do need to take initial responsibility for stimulating this and for giving leadership here. It is squarely within the mandate of governments to initiate this, primarily through policy, but also through other tools that they have. The framing that is provided quite often for developing countries, for example, is what is referred to quite often as leapfrogging, whatever this means in practice can take days to explain. But it simply means a recognition of the problems that we now see in industrialized countries because they used a pretty unsustainable model to grow their economies, and to learn from those and avoid those same mistakes and go directly to solutions that are much better and much more oriented towards the well-being and sustainability of their own societies. How do you skip over the mistakes and take the good points? Now, there are a number of ways that governments can do this. The first thing is recognition that they do take leadership, but that they don't do it alone. They bring along other actors, businesses, other institutions, as well as the public. A very simple example of how government can show leadership here, besides policy, public policy, is through public procurement. This is a very good signal that the government itself is using every instrument that it has within its power to support a more circular economy. Another way is reorienting its own budget. The government budgets every year for the country. It puts money in multiple programs and so on. Simply budgeting for a circular economy over a linear economy is not only indicative, it drains finances from those bad parts of our economy and redirects them to innovative and more sustainable areas. Together with this, it needs to start working with other actors and asking, how is it that we consume? What are the priorities that we have? But even more important, a recognition of where there is limited agency among other actors. There are many companies that want to be green, that want to be good. I don't think most companies intentionally want to be nasty, but the licensing systems we have, the procurement systems that we have, the standards for production that we have, the permissions that we give them, or even the reporting and investment mechanisms, lock them into systems that are not green. We need to start changing this. And it's not only businesses that can do it alone. Governments need to be there. And in this case, we see that quite a lot of businesses are reluctant because they lose a competitive advantage in the sense that becoming more circular, taking the first move, puts them into an area that is a little bit more risky, while the guys that are not necessarily the good ones are reaping the benefits. But we need to change this, right? So we also need to change this in how the public or people are going about their everyday living. What sort of infrastructure are we investing in? What sort of infrastructure for transportation? What sort of infrastructure for food delivery? What sort of investments in agriculture, in housing, and so on are we doing that supports everyday living by people? Governments really do need to take leadership here, both in setting the tone, in giving direction, and also in putting their finances where they're claiming they need to go.
If I may bring to the table, because I think the conceptually what you're saying is really the way to move forward. And if I look how in the Netherlands over the past 5-6 years, this bigger group of actors, the government sometimes being in the lead, but other times knowledge institutions, companies, that we have gone through this journey over the past 5-6 years, and I very much agree with, in the end, a lot needs to come from bottom-up innovation, that small companies and that are backbone of the economy need to be enabled to do things. But like you were saying, Louis, there needs to be a certain framework in place that enables them to do so. And to pick out a few examples, I have a background in the construction industry, and what we saw over the past years is that a lot of people and companies started talking about circularity and offer something circular, but at some point you ran into certain limitations of, but how do we measure circularity? Because one company says, oh, I have done this element, or I've recycled a few elements in my building, so it's a circular building. And the other one says, oh, but that's not true. And then So an initiative that started from the government in the Netherlands, but in collaboration with industry and knowledge institutions. This is called Platform CB23 in Holland. And this is a group of people and experts that are working on setting new standards. So together with industry, they start to define how do we measure circularity in the construction industry, so that in the end you get one unified way of measuring this circularity. And then when talking about circular procurement, for example, that if the government or another institution does circular procurement and says you need to prove your level of circularity, that all parties that are signing up to do the job are doing this among the same measurement of circularity. And I think in order to do so, to enable the economy and society to do things, certain elements like how do we measure certain things, what are laws that are in place, that needs to come up from more the governmental level, to set those basic rules of play, like we have them in our linear economy as well.
Andrea, you have a lot of experience about what Rob talked about, correct? Now tell us about this.
Not really, but there is something I agree on, is that we need to speak the same language. The same language has to be there. The lead from the government is important, but it's also we need to connect and work together in collaboration with universities to help companies. So I can speak from the academic, first being part of a political international organization, where I could recognize the interest of developed countries to finance projects, sometimes circular projects in developing countries. And then I switched to the academic sector because I needed to understand the tools that can be used and help companies to really, and not only companies, but different kind of organizations, communities, to become more circular. So I agree that it has to be a connection with the organizations that do research. Also because we are training the future professionals. So we are trying to change the mindset of them, and especially in design. I like to use design as the vehicle to reach a circular economy, and it's important to start designing products and services good from the beginning. But we need that collaboration between government, universities, and companies or organizations.
Okay. You all agree that one main thing is that political commitment of having one communication, one specific and very specific and tangible communication, and the policies. Correct? Do the people and the companies need money to do that?
I think the experience from Europe would suggest that, yes, there is money required. I mean, in some of the work we've been doing in the study that Alex referenced about Uruguay and Mexico, Chile and Brazil, we can look back at the best of the roadmaps from Europe, in Finland, in Holland, in France, and look at the things they found through them going through this introspective process of looking at what are the enablers that they can add in that aren't there, that would move us in this direction. What are the barriers right now that are stopping us from moving in that direction? That even if we have that idea to be more circular, there are probably some laws already on the books that force you to do it in some completely linear way, because that's how the law was written in 1729 or whenever it was, and so the experience is that the EC put together a pot of money directly for circular economy stuff. And innovators and designers and all different actors, all different stakeholders have been, applying to take some of that money and experiment a little, do some of that design innovation and thinking differently and try things. And I think where we're ending up in our program that we've been working on is that you have to end up with pilot programs. Try some things. Because we don't just have all the answers. This isn't, as we said right at the beginning, this isn't like an expert, here I am, I have all the solutions. Hey, here you are, you have number 3, you have number 27, and this doesn't work this way. We have to relearn how to make everything and use everything and get to this state of better well-being, and that takes trying things. So we have to have some experimentation money.
But do you think, Ken, if I may add that, on the regulation element, also in Europe, what you sometimes see, I think the regulation gets very complicated in terms of the laws around plastics, for example. Could things not be more simple, or with CO2 emissions? For years is going on, like cars need to reduce their CO2 emissions by X percentage. I feel like those laws are to stimulate the same system, but only for them to be less bad. So shouldn't there be a few new simple rules in place?
I think there should. And I will draw on my experience from before I started working on sustainability and circularity, what's now circularity. When I was in business, I was bemoaning these very facts. It's like, how can we innovate when you box us in with legislation? And what I would argue for is what I call an innovative product exemption. Right? And I did this in California in one instance where the law said, for example, you can't emit more than a certain amount of volatile organic chemicals into the air because it's bad for the environment. That seems like a reasonable stance to take. So the legal framework says you cannot put more than 7% volatiles into your product because you'll then be emitting too much. But I said, what happens if I could put 100% volatiles into my product and emit less than your 7% product? And they went, huh? How can something that's 100% emit less than 7? Well, you don't put as much of it out. 1 drop of 100% is less than, a liter of 7%. Now just do the math. And they sort of got it, but they were really worried that I was trying to pull a fast one and change the legislation. I said, look, no, we have an innovative product exemption. If you feel the need to put in your 7% law, put it in. Make a box that I'm stuck in and I can't innovate out of. You're really tying my hands behind my back. But I want to innovate. That's what I do best in the company. I innovate. I get my competitive advantage. I come out with new products. And we showed them that we had a product that would emit less of the bad stuff than their law. And so I said, okay, as long as you can prove to me that it really does achieve more than we put in by our regulation, you're allowed. So that gives you the freedom and the license to innovate and design in a completely different way, but still with the same intention of the rigid regulation. So I think you need something like an innovative product exemption to allow you to break out of the box, because otherwise, yes, you can be just...
Otherwise, the companies make sure, like, I can emit 100 grams of CO2, so they put it at 99, and that's where they stop with innovating, basically. I think Lewis was raising...
Luis.
I think this, the idea of products, I really like this very much because it quite a lot of conversations we've had around growing the economy involves how to tweak products to make them more sustainable. And I dare say a part of innovation is not just about product innovation. It's also about social innovation. There's something quite interesting that is happening here. We all know the problem with the GDP, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But the essential issue here is what the government is using to calibrate itself as being successful is quite misleading in terms of the happiness that it's providing to people. So what if, in very simplistic terms, and I know this is oversimplifying a complex issue, what is actually guiding government policy or public policy is the well-being of society. And we started making sure that every investment that is made, every law that is crafted, every product that is designed is contributing towards that large objective. What we start seeing is what is sometimes called choice editing, that some of the stuff we have, some of the products we have, no matter how natural they are, or we claim they are, or how efficient they claim they are not even necessary. They're occupying space. that could have been used for something else, right? So some kind of an audit is needed in terms of what we're actually validating as products in society. Almost every research from the social science field is showing again and again that we're going back. We've experimented with individualistic approaches. We've experimented with material accumulation, and we've realized that it is not providing the rewards that we thought we could find in there. And so we're going back to the past to look at how we lived in communities, to look at how we shared with each other, to look at how we collaborated around meeting our needs in a common pool rather than as individuals. And these are very teaching aspects of how we could start rebuilding our economy. But quite often, attention is not paid to this, not because they're not important, not because people don't like them, but because we are driving too many products in the name of circularity. We're driving too much of business in the name of circularity, instead of really looking at social innovation or a rethink of where those products or those businesses would lead us. I don't want this to end up sounding as an anti-business argument, but I think it is very worth mentioning that the impetus for innovation is not just around products, but around wider society as well.
I would like to say some stuff here. Some things about this thing about what we are expecting. We are getting back, in my opinion, to and to the point that we need something bigger that moves everyone to the same direction, that inspires everyone. And if you talk about the benefits of the circular economy, first thing we have to think is how we're going to share these benefits, right, with everyone, because today the benefits in the linear economy is not being shared. We even share the burdens. There are people who get the burdens and people who get the benefits. So first thing is how we're going to share. And in our work in Brazil, we are now working with the government of Brazil, trying to design a roadmap for the implementation of the circular economy. And there is the Ministry of Science and Technology taking the lead, not environment, not economics, but in technology, which is very interesting. And the area of the ministry there is working with us is the bioeconomy, is responsible for the new plan for bioeconomy in Brazil, which makes the whole sense. Brazil has the Amazonia, has the biomas, has the big coast, and you have a textile, you have some industry, you have plastics, you have chemicals, exactly, which all are related, agriculture and etc. Okay. Then you start to get a glimpse what can be beneficial and what has to change within some common understanding what is good for that territory. But let's talk about it a little bit on another scale, which is the level of the community, but because in the end, we're talking about collaborating around the community. You still have to have this vision, what is beneficial for the small community, and you still have to improve what guides this community to reach this. So one problem about regulations is that we have to know what are the regulations that are becoming a barrier, or what are the cultural understanding of an issue. For example, reusing or waste, organic waste. It was a culturally dealing with this as a sanitary problem, not as a potential food and health potentially be using this waste locally. So all the system and regulation now is a barrier for using the organic waste in Brazil, for instance, to do fertilizers. So a whole new regulation has to be made to look into this problem, let's say, but as a solution or an opportunity to grow locally, like urban. So you have entrepreneurs in the place I live, around the place I live, that are starting have startups on how to do the logistics on organic waste. Imagine we don't have a specialized logistic to transform organic waste, to collect, to separate, and transform it into fertilizers. And in the end, you go back to the system. And you have social technologies, very small groups learning how to compost and to use it and grow locally in a community to feed the children with vegetables, and improve nutrition. They call it the revolution of the buckets, because they use the buckets to compost and everything in a small community. And this experience in Brazil went to Sao Paulo, and now Sao Paulo is starting to collect all the through the university, collect all the open markets for fruits and vegetables, which is huge, Sao Paulo, and they are starting to redo the idea of using this waste as a organic waste and more than 50% of the waste in Brazil, I think in most of the Latin America countries, are organic. So we're talking about recycling. What? It's all technology from Europe, all products from Europe, materials made there, designed there, for products designed there. But what about our potentials? And how can this build a more biodiversity? Or emit less carbon, and then just to do a little bit of tangible understanding, or what could be a vision of transformative vision to drive the money, to drive the regulations. And I just want, before finishing, to capture something that Andrea said, which is we need professionals understanding, because when you talk about, okay, the government needs to change that, or the organization needs to change that, but it's all about people, professionals. We discussed this with the university. We are going to the courses in the university and discussing this with professors, and they said, okay, I'm teaching my students in the final thesis in a linear way, because the whole system is based on the linear economy. So there will be the next professionals for today. They're today being learned. So they're going to be the next technical professionals in the government and in the organizations, the profit or non-profit organizations, and they will struggle to understand that they can do differently. They have this wish, but they cannot. So there are some elements. You have to have a vision. You have to have the people understand, the professional ones. You have to have the technology and the money going towards and rebalancing the way we are working.
Wait a second, Ken. So those people that you, for example, are training and are teaching at the university, what you do is that you put some seed inside them, and they believe in something and they go for that belief. That's
for the technical stuff. But Andrea should talk to it. But for the technical stuff, they are technical stuff. They are professionals. They need to know the tools and how to use this. But please, Andrea.
I was going to build on what Alex said, and then we come back to education, because there's a lot to unpack there. But remember, we went to the favelas.
Yep.
Right. And we saw, even in the favelas, that we already had circular solutions that were in even what you might think were the most difficult of circumstances for people living.
Almost 10 years ago.
10 years ago, right? And biomass, right, being collected, being put in biodigesters, creating gas was used then to cook that gave meals for the kids in the local school. This is the community level work that can go on. It's circular economy, but you never talked about it. We don't sell that.
When the gas finished for someone in the community, they went to the school and cooked there, because there was free gas made from the sewage. in this small community in
So
Brazil.
this is the
It was
community
very
level
sharing the
putting this
benefits,
into practice.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to remind.
Yeah, I totally agree. We are in a region that is unique, and there are practices already implemented by communities that are circular. I just want to tell about my short experience as a professor and researcher in the Universidad Jorge Tadeo Lozano, and the best way that I like to work with the students, more than training them, is working with them, is to involve the students into real projects. So in 2017, I started leading a project that is called Transurban Lab. And it was a project that was under the frame of France and Colombia. That was a year that France and Colombia were exchanging experiences. And we chose a neighborhood in Bogota to connect with a neighborhood in France. And start working with the communities to see what are the real needs that they have and how they can learn from each other. But in this process, there was a group of students, not only from the program of industrial design, but from different programs of the university, working with us, with the researchers. They were part of a team, so they have the opportunity to apply the tools and all the elements that they learned during the programs, and to work with with two real communities. The result was that the neighborhood in France was very supported by the government to implement urban agriculture, and the community in Belém have all the knowledge to do urban agriculture, but didn't have the support of the government, of our Colombian government. We ended up building a community garden where the community in Belém was aiming to become auto-sustainable in production and consumption of food. And nowadays, like 3-4 years later that the project started, we are now working on making a community kitchen. So all the analysis of the food flows and the organic waste that are transformed to become nutrients for the soil. Now we are integrating all the knowledge and the tradition that are in our cooking practices, and this is giving a lot of power to the women that we are working with, and we start seeing side effects or benefits of just starting with studying with a study project with our students of food flows, and it ended up having a much greater impact.
Wait a second, Luis. How many children were they feeding?
Right now we have the quantities of how much they are producing, but the food that is produced in the community garden is shared among the families of the neighborhood.
Do you know how many families?
It's different because the families that want to join, they have their own management system,
Okay.
to say, in order to be fair and to have the value of to be a community.
All right, Luis.
Thank you so much. And I apologize that I would need to leave after this. It's pretty late here, and my apologies. Two things that I wanted to mention was the idea of education, and something that was mentioned earlier on experimentation, which I think are really critical and central to changing the course we have here. Most of what we're operating, most of the operating manual or the operating system of our society right now, most of what we know, the tools, the laws, and what is guiding our everyday reality is based on the linear model. And this is what we're trying to change. And it's sometimes easy to underestimate the challenge that comes with this. Even from intentioned governments and businesses and other stakeholders in society. It's a major challenge to say the hundreds of years of traditional development as we know it cannot sustain us into a far future. And so within a few decades, we need to transform that completely. So education, of course, is quite central here, but also experimentation is quite central here. Trying out new things and sometimes failing, but also sometimes getting rewards, which we can then scale. And another thing that I think, especially because we're discussing here about developing countries, is the notion of protecting what is already circular. You've already given a few examples around waste management and community practices. We need to protect these before they get pushed into the market economy that is linear, and then we start rushing in to say, you should go back and get circular. That notion of protecting these aspects is really quite important for developing countries. In addition to that, it is worth asking, what are questions that already what are lessons that already industrialized countries can borrow from still developing economies and reintroduce in their own societies in order to reduce the overall impact of their own production and consumption on the environment. And so it's really a two-way system here, where on the one hand, we're looking at reducing the impact of highly industrialized countries, but also on the other hand, supporting countries that still need to meet the well-being of millions and sometimes billions of citizens and bring them up to a level of consumption which supports their everyday living. But then there's no shortage of lessons coming from the global south to the north, and we need mechanisms, we need institutional arrangements that allow for this kind of knowledge to get reintroduced and become a part of the circular economy framing. I will leave it at that. And I really thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. And my apologies that I have to leave a bit early. Thank you.
Luis, it was an honor having you today. And also, of course, a pleasure. And it's very late. It might be 11 o'clock in Berlin right now. So you must be tired. And we thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luis.
Bye.
Rob, you were going to say something. You were thinking about saying something about what Luis was saying.
Then it might have slipped my mind for the moment.
All right.
Honest, so
okay.
And I can pick up on something on education that I think maybe ties some things together. See, for me, it's more than the curriculum. I've spoken in many universities in Colombia, and every time I insist that if I'm going to give a talk to faculty and students, that I also want to talk to the administration. And my talk to the administration is similar to the one to faculty and staff, but it has a different twist to it. And that twist is you need to provide an experience of being at the university that lives up to all of these ideals that we've been talking about, that we're calling the circular economy, so that you don't only learn the circular economy as something that's taught in biology or mechanics or engineering or whatever, but you feel it viscerally as you live it through the university experience. And it ties in, I think, also with what Luis was saying about government procurement. Okay, Mr. University, how much money do you spend every year to run your establishment? X thousand million, whatever your currency is, right? Why not begin to use your purchasing power to begin to move into these ideas and thought space? And what are you buying that is all circular? And so that as the students come onto the campus and as they go to the cafeteria or just walk from place A to place B to another lecture theater or whatever it might be, where is that circularity being experienced and demonstrated viscerally on the campus? So it's not just, I'm going to learn about circularity today in class 101, right?
So what you're saying is that the universities must teach circular economy, teaching by doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if I can add, by experimenting, right? Just grabbing a little bit of the what Louis said, and I think we are talking about experimentation a lot, and innovation. And if we go back to the local, which a more bottom down approach, bottom up approach is this. What are the organizations? And I like very much this idea that the humankind build amazing stuff when they are organized. And if you see companies or NGOs or governments, they're organizations of people trying to do something that alone they will never do. So sometimes gets wrong, sometimes are not very fair, but it's a way to do great stuff. So talking about organizations and local ones, they have to rethink their mindset, how they, in the daily basis, they experiment the new. They don't, because it's all about innovation. You have to risk more, and to risk more, you need to rebalance the the gains and burdens, which is you have to give more freedom for error for who wants to experiment and try and not and fail. You don't, most of the time, who fails gets the burden, and not is rewarded for the experimentation. So we need the government or any organization. If you have a company, think about it. If you have an NGO, think about it. Why not rebalancing people? They are trying to experiment for sustainability and for more resilient and responsible approach for things. Try to understand that the company has to think about this, because this will give them the strength to be in the future, to sustain itself in the future. You have to be the next standard of thinking, or doing the ways in a new ways, the things in a new way. So that's my point. I don't know if I make it clear, but to innovate, you need to rebalancing the playing field.
Let me understand one thing. What you say is that there's a main purpose, okay, of those institutions. They need to have that purpose, that dream, and that dream must be communicated as one message, as one common message. And one important thing is letting people know that message, where to go, and the how do they do it. You let them do it, and it will be good if they make mistakes, because they are going to learn from those mistakes, and they are going to improve, and they're going to get what they want.
Again, if you want to send a man to the moon, you don't know exactly what are the boots they need. You need to say, look, we want to go to the moon. Try it and send me your trial. And now I'll do the experimentation here and do the experts learn with this, but I will pay for you trying this because it's risky. I will pay for you.
That's the key
But
thing.
it's not just paying with money. It's paying with flexibilization of regulations. It's paying with some because in Brazil, just a small comment. In Brazil, you have this starting this calls for startups doing circular economy. It's just the second or third one. In the middle of many things, there are startups, but if a company wants to do a startup wants to do a product to be shared and to pay for the use, there's a problem on tax laws, because tax laws don't see your product. If you don't sell it and pay for the selling, you don't move the product. If you don't move the products, there's something wrong. How can you pay for taxes? So there's a problem of between the governmental agency that is providing the money for the startups, and the tax that is made for the linear transition of every product is one product, one sale. So there's some stuff that will not figure out by a group of technicians, circular economy experts that come into the government and start to design and redesign, because it's systemic. And the systems, it changes by experimenting. Let's learn from nature. Nature is like this.
What I think, adding when you, which I love, the comparison you make with the mission of going to the moon, and I think we need this positive oriented mission for circular economy too. But I think what we also need, what is still missing out, we also need to be willing to call out the bad things. I think we have this tendency, I think, in many parts of society to also, and it's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. To keep everyone on board and to try to be kind. But I think there also need to be people that are willing to stand up and be able to say, on top of this great vision that we have to go to the moon, we also need to be able to call out the things that we cannot do anymore, and that there is, again, the comparison with the pandemic. I think there is a lot of let me call it, in some countries, probably shaming going on if you don't wear a face mask anymore in certain places, and people are being called out on that. Whether you agree with that or not is another thing, but in that space that is happening. And I think within certain industries, if I may make the comparison on that, we need to stick now to certain new rules in order for our health. But if you would call out the fossil fuel industry and all the bad emissions that come from that are bad for our health, are we tomorrow going to close Shell and BP and so on as well, because it's bad for our health? So what I'm trying to say is, like, in some parts of our society, we're able and willing to call out certain bad things and really make harsh decisions on that. And I feel in the field of circular economy, yes, we have a beautiful vision of where we need to move, but we're not willing or able to say goodbye to certain things yet.
Sorry, but I do not clearly agree with that. I have just this comment. I don't think that guilty of or prohibiting what is bad will drive innovation. I don't think these two things. I think it's good to regulate what is bad, but what we need now, I'll call Greta. Greta said everyone knows what we should not do. There's no more time to talk about what's not to do. We have to do things, anything. We have to start, even if
But what we need to do is also stop with certain things. That's also doing something. I think that's the thing here.
I'm afraid to lose more time with, wasting time for saying people this is wrong. Instead of trying to build the environment to innovation and experimentation starts very strongly.
I think there's a way to do that is a positive way of looking at it, which is you start saying, I prefer things which are sustainably circular. That's going to be my preference. When I choose to replace my jacket, I prefer to find one that's more sustainably circular, whatever that means, right? And we can have a whole new seminar next year on what does that mean. But, I begin to make my choices in line with this goal. And it doesn't mean to say I won't buy a pair of socks or something that doesn't live up to that because there's some reason why I needed that pair of socks. It had a funny face on it that made me smile, right? And it was a gift from whatever it was. But I think you can do this into the public procurement. You can do this into the universities and say, look, when we start spending our budget for next year, we are going to prefer things that are sustainably circular. And the first reaction of everybody you buy from are going to say, what the hell are you talking about, right? Because I don't even understand it. We don't have this language. We've never even had this conversation before. Good. Now we start a conversation. I've provoked you with a statement that makes us have a conversation about what this preference means. And now, if I have to choose between 2 or 3 vendors for whatever it is I'm buying, my computers or whatever it is the university or the government needs, then if somebody comes to me with a new innovation where they can tell a story that it's more sustainable or more circular, and it's got real facts behind it, not just some greenwash, right? We have to be careful of this. But then I can say, oh, okay, the prices are the same. This one is better because it has this new embedded quality, this quality of sustainably circular. And so we begin to pull products apart based on this expansion of a definition of quality. That the product isn't as good, the old one that you're saying is bad, isn't as good as the new one because it doesn't have this new quality of sustainably circular. Now, we will have to have a lot of education of what on earth that means. It sounds too technical to where you started the discussion.
But Ken, if just to poke here a little bit, like in your example, if the circular product, sustainably circular product versus the linear one, and if they're the same price, well, the decision to make is an obvious one. What if the linear product is cheaper? Like what? Then you might say, well, I go for that. Like, and that sometimes still happens because of this system we're in, that the environmental cost is not calculated into it.
Well, I would say you have to then begin to live up to your principles. If you stated a principle that I am going to prefer something, then I think you've got to try and push. And I agree, the whether it's a little bit cheaper or more expensive, I think will work out over time. But I think we have to start asking for it. If we don't ask for it, they won't provide it. So if the university or the government doesn't start a procurement program that begins to shift from where we are to this new place, it won't happen. And so it's just a way to begin a conversation that then leads to, you can have a hard bargaining session, right? The Dutch are known, right, for their hard bargaining as purchasing people. I've met a few in my time, right? So you can have the hard financial discussion. But you try to keep it principled and saying, I want to move this way. And at first, I'm sending you a fairly soft signal that I'll pick somebody else and not you. I'm not saying goodbye, you're gone. I'm not being as harsh as you're out because you're oil and gas. I'm trying to be a little softer, but still push. And it's a way to at least have some movement, I think, and start a conversation.
I agree with that, definitely.
If I can add an example, I was talking about Brazil and the waste, organic waste, right? And imagine the country, because now the countries, it's a golden rush for the circular economy. We can see that Europe, just with the new Green Deal, decided that they will influence every country they can to go into the circular economy. And they, of course, will try to bring their products and their technology, which is good in many ways. But what is the role for Brazil or other countries in this new economy? If you are a government, you have to think not in 100 years, you have to think in 500 years. You're position yourself as a culture and a place to this new reality. And if you decide as a society that you will use the natural resources the most you can, and not waste any organic or biodiversity, or we have not to lose. We cannot lose anything that is valuable for us, and be the potential country that will release the new standards for biomaterials and bioenergy and biotextiles and etc. bioplastics, etc. Then you are leading the message, and people will say, "Don't waste. That's my product." I call in Brazil. I don't know if you know, but 98% of the aluminum cans are recovered, so almost 100%. And I say, okay, there's many social and industrial things that makes it possible. But imagine this for every material. For every material, people don't lose any can because it's valuable somehow. for their culture. And I remember when I was young, people just separate their cans in the parties because poor people, you knew you were helping someone with a small thing, which is the value of the can. So it's not a good environment, but you need to think how to recreate this in this thing that you value the materials in a way that is important for a society, not just important for business, but important for culturally.
Yeah, and I've been learning over time about the informal recycling industry that exists here in Latin
Very
America.
complex issue.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean in Europe or in the Netherlands, we also for years already separated the glass and the paper and certain things, but that's only for a few waste streams that are have been well regulated at some point, and that works. And I just maybe someone in the room with a bit more expertise on that, like wondering also why that hasn't been introduced into more types of streams yet. There is a few around the world, I think, paper, cardboard, glass, some of the main ones where this has been relatively well organized, and there's value in that, exactly what you're saying. And because there is value, that value is made visible. People are making sure the separation happens. But why in so many other waste streams, that value is not coming out yet? Is there someone?
Well, I think there are things happening that are bubbling up that aren't quite here yet, or are just nascent, just appearing, that have to do with things like the Internet of Things and the connectivity and what data availability begins to allow us to do now that we couldn't do before. And let me give you an example to try and make that sentence real. These examples of materials that are being collected in some way are the various very obvious ones, and the high volume ones. They're also, obviously with aluminum, the high value ones, right? So they're the obvious ones. But there's lots and lots of other things that we're not collecting and reutilizing, and we have no systems at all to do it. And even if you did it, think of it as a bigger level, and said a company might have some waste from something they're doing, they don't know what to do with it. There's somebody on the other side of the city who just love to get their hands on that thing, but they don't even know it exists. So you don't know what you don't know, right? And so with the Internet of Things, we're beginning to see, and in the platform here, we're developing some new tools that we'll be rolling out over time that enable to make this more visible. So that how would I know that on the other side of the island here, that there's somebody with a resource, right? A material that is quote unquote a waste, but it's not. It's a potential nutrient for some other system. And now through the Internet of Things, there can be a way to say, hey, I've got 50 kilos of whatever it is. And there's somebody else who's looking for 50 kilos of whatever it is, and you can do a matchmaking. And I think these sort of things, new tools, new enablers, will begin to come in to fill some of these gaps.
And get complex. It's much more complex to ensure the quality of a waste, organic waste, and in parallel of, I don't know, glass. It's easy, you can know if it is. You can count. But how clean or how nutritious is your organic waste? The circular economy is systemic. You cannot. You have to connect the organic waste, so the streams of waste of a urban area with the rural area, which is potentially using this as fertilizers. So you have these two streams: the rural stream or industrial stream, agriculture, with urban, industrial, and even residential waste. And you have to start. Yesterday we were talking about and Mauricio from Mexico gave us a wonderful example that the tequileras, the tequila in Mexico, they are using their waste as input for the chemical company to do plastic, bioplastics for the industry, the automobile industry. So Who regulates? Who would think about look, start a tequilera that you provide the bioplastics for the automobile company. So it's too complexity. We are in the age of complexity. So trying to figure out first with drawings, and I'm an architect from my training. So architects think they draw things and things will work. Most of the architects, they're trying to do that because it's a no professional. I always say it's a 2,000-year professional, so it's complicated or more. But we have to lose a little bit things and try to other forces of, you have to stimulate from one side, you have to to release the barriers, and you have to also to punish who is not doing good. But the systemic approach is more important because it gets too complex.
So one thing you're saying is that once you design or you produce or whatever within the circular economy, there are some kind of other issues that you never know where they are going to end. Because because one thing about the tequila, it's just exercising. It's just
ask a designer about what happens when you try to figure out all the things in the design. You have to. We were talking yesterday about centric. Try to go more centric on the user, and the user is everyone, right? It's. I would like to rethink about this type of designing stuff is not is not figuring out everything about this thing. Is more like stimulating the right use of. You have to stimulate people to find the new solutions, to redesign the stuff by their own a little bit. I don't know.
And they find out different solutions for things they never thought about, because you never know when you design, and you design for, I don't know, whatever product, and you design it for Rob, and Rob said, okay, cool, and you're trying to sell it to me, you say, no, because I see something different. I like this, I like it, I'm going to buy it, but I'm going to buy it because I need some other you solve with this, you solve me another problem, another different problem.
And I think you just gave an example of maybe what is wrong in design is like zooming in only underneath of Rob or only underneath of you. So instead of that, we need to zoom in out to understand the complexity, to apply systematic thinking, and to recognize all the actors that are involved in the process. And when we start seeing, like, if one company waste is no waste for other company are the resources, so we start creating that symbiosis between them. And then you start designing a system, not only a product or a service, but you design for flows that are circular and non linear.
I think adding on to what you're saying is that it is key, from what I see in the construction industry, to keep your material streams clean and pure, and not. And if you mix them, at least that you have the information and data available about what you did. Because the example with the waste from tequila, for example, and it's used in the automotive industry, but I'm sure these bioplastics can be used in many other industries as well. So it's about the type and the quality of bioplastics you can produce. And from that, you can decide in which industrial streams that end up. But it's, I think, about having documenting very well what you do from start to end, so you can create a cycle.
Yeah, but additional to that, that's planning and designing from the beginning. So from the beginning, you know that you want a circular flow, So you cannot use toxics, you cannot use permanent connections. So you start applying a different design principles to comply with design and with flows that are circular. So not just at the end trying to do something with the waste and trying to exchange materials, but from the beginning you think about that systemic and about those circular flows that can be benefit for different actors in the value chain.
We're just about to finish, and I want you to give me just one thing we learned from today. 30 seconds each. Ladies first.
30 seconds to think also. No, but I think I have it clear. I really love what Ken put on table, like especially about training professional. And I think the best way is we need to give example in-house. We need to start being circular, and in that way they learn easier. So I didn't think about that before, but for sure it's a great advice and suggestion, and it make all the sense.
Go clockwise. What I got from today, definitely, what Alex has been saying, the vision, we got to have him in place. So it starts with this vision. I think that is really, really key. And what I would like to add to that in the concluding remarks, it is key to then know what you're doing. Well, don't think I'm stealing that from you, but we talked about that the other day, where you were also saying, if, for example, on Aruba here, you want to make certain change circular, you need to know what you're talking about, what volumes, what. So if you have that vision in place, you need to know what is the size, what are the material streams you need to start working on. Otherwise, it all stays very vague. And what I would like to add to that as a third step is, then it does not come down from a top down or only a bottom up approach, but you need all these stakeholders, because if a government identifies these streams, he'll need to work with industry to make them happen. And I think it's key to not forget about that.
For me, I think I got the most out of having a new member of our team with Lewis joining us and giving us a different perspective from a new person from within the group. And I think for me, it was very reinforcing of things we've probably touched on before, but I think he was good at crystallizing many of these things very succinctly. And in particular, I think this idea, which is embedded in sustainability, which is equity, right? It's one of the 3 E's, but it always gets pushed down. And I think I heard him bringing the social aspect up more and more, and even prioritizing it more. And I think that's a good thing to do.
Well, one important thing I felt from this discussion, which I was a little bit scared about the topic. How we'll talk about the benefits in a tangible way. But for me, we succeed on delivering many insights, and one of the insights I would like to highlight is the idea that the sustainable, responsible, and more taking mission that our generation have of everything, and people, planet, and the economics, in a way that this is the way we express ourselves as a society. We exchange things that are valuable. We exchange knowledge, we exchange culture, we exchange understanding and products as well. So this is important for us. We need to do this change. It's not gonna make it spontaneously. It's not from the willing of or figuring out what is wrong. Is by planning, is by really creating the conditions. So the planning in the old way, which is defining every single step to do, I don't believe we're gonna make it in such a complex work. But technology is growing. Okay, knowledge of tracking everything. Okay, but if we need to use this technology with with a more systemic understanding that the stimulation, what are the stimulus we want to do, what are the pushing pushing and the carrots we're gonna make for people to go into this system, go into this new challenge we put. To forget about a little bit too much high level like climate change. Let's be more local on the challenge. Let's be more local. So from my understanding, we discussed a lot of good ideas of how to make this challenge come for Aruba or any place. So then you will talk about benefits.
I want to finish telling you two things. First of all, I'm quite honored to be here with you because I have learned so many things. I wrote like 2.5 pages of what I learned, and I thank you. I thank you all. Thank you all. And the thing I got the most was something each of you said. One is to be sustainable, that you said, but sustainability, I understood sustainability for well-being, money, which is economics, because that makes sustainability a long time, and also take care of environment, of teaching people, because those students you're teaching today, those are the people who are going to the government and who are going to change all the laws that we need to change and get the sustainability. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And for you also, all the people who's watching us, thank you very much for attending us and for being with us this 2 hours. Bye-bye.